what sort of recommendations would you have for other therapists who wanting to include some kind of physical movement in their
Mm,
sessions with either young people or
mm,
adults?
mm,
Like, do you have
mm.
any recommendations for other people or even little changes they can make to their practice to make it a little bit more engaging as you have?
Yeah,
Minus the gym
yeah,
and all the
yeah,
fancy equipment that you
yeah.
have.
Yeah, and that's the powerful thing. I mean, I don't lie that exercise-based therapy works best in its gym, but it can in a gym, but it can work in just a room, in just a basic room with very limited equipment. It could be something as simple as something like walk and talk therapy. Thinking about the route that you walk on. One of the things that happens in exercise-based therapy is often the gym, the weights, the kind of equipment become a part of the therapy. It can be used as an analogy within a conversation. So say you're going on a walk and talk with someone and they're walking up a massive hill. Use that hill as an analogy. Well, when we're walking up the hill, it's really slow, it's really hard, it can be really challenging, but it's step by step. And you're walking along and you're just trying to get to the top, and you'll feel really good when you get to the top, but halfway through, it's actually really hard. So you can actually use even that as an analogy. But that's what we use in exercise-based therapy a lot, is like if we're doing a cardio circuit and halfway through that person's really struggling, they're huffing and puffing, we can kind of say, hey, we're going to get to the end of this, it will be okay. But that's exactly like a mental health journey. It's hard in the middle of it. You're slogging real hard, you're huffing, you're puffing, and you're trying to do the best you can. And it can seem like it's not going to end, but it does. And eventually it'll all settle and it will come. But it can be really hard in that middle part. Another really simple little thing that I do with a lot of people is if you've got a a bin and a piece of paper, screw up that piece of paper and use it like a basketball, throw the paper into the bin. But you can do so many different things with that. You can do goal setting. How many times will you get that? How many times do you want that paper to go into the bin? Like we'll do 10 shots. What's your goal? Oh, so I might want to get 9 out of 10. Okay, cool. Let's do that. So they do that and say they get 8 out of 10. So they failed their goal. Okay, what are we going to do differently? You break down failure. What are you going to do differently next time? How are you going to look at this differently?
Helps build resilience, it sounds like.
Yeah, and also just
Mm.
reframing failure, because all of the stuff from exercise-based therapy comes from a place of that elite coaching and that background that I came from, because often I would find myself using social work techniques with athletes. They're on the runway, they're panicking, they're anxious about performing well. I can bring in a lot of
Is this
therapeutic
prior to
techniques.
you studying social work? Did you study social work after you
Mm.
finished your professional athlete career? Like, what was
It
your
was actually,
timeline?
it was integrated, which is why it works
Okay.
so well. And
In which
then
sport, can I ask?
pole vaulting was my sport.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a high level athlete. And what happened is I was coming into the last few years of my career, but I had reached a plateau with my performance. I wasn't performing as well as I could. And so I thought I was at the time learning a lot of stuff around acceptance and commitment therapy and mindfulness and lots of those kind of breath work grounding techniques in my social work degree. And I kind of thought, I want to give this a crack in my vaulting career. So, when I'm feeling anxious, when I'm feeling nervous, I'm going to do mindfulness, I'm going to do breath work, I'm going to do all this stuff. So I had to adapt it to a track setting, but use exactly the same therapeutic methods. And then when I was coaching, I had to do the same thing. So I would have athletes who are anxious and nervous, and I'd be like, what tool can I pull out from my
Yeah.
therapy bag that can help them? But even that overarching one is failure is a part of sport. Failing is a part of sport. And if you listen to high level sports people, often what they will say is they will just look at failure as just a part of the process, just a part of the journey. And so we do a lot of work around reframing failure, and say you're going through a mental health journey and you have a setback, instead of letting that setback really impact you and reflecting on yourself, reflecting on your person, look at it as data collection, look at it as information that you can then utilize to go again, because that's what elite athletes do. That's what I learned through coaching high level athletes. When they fail, they sit there and go, well, that sucks. But what are we taking from this? Like, what didn't
Mm.
work? What should we need to change? And then they go and do it again. They don't just sit there and go, oh, well, this sucks. I'm crap. I'm not going to do this again. So
It's like
it's
the old saying that if you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you'll get the same results. And it's probably
yeah.
similar in this case, unless
Mm,
you sort of implement the tools and strategies to look at, to reflect and think, well, what have I not done, or what can I
mm,
include next
mm,
time in my training,
mm,
or whatever it may
mm,
be, to then get a
mm,
better outcome. Then also
mm,
there's the growth mindset, and maybe they can't do something yet, but then
mm,
when they continue to reflect and
mm,
train and
mm,
practice, then
mm,
presumably then they would be able to improve as
mm,
well if it doesn't happen, because
mm,
obviously change doesn't happen
mm,
instantly. But and it's interesting you were talking about acceptance and commitment therapy and how you
mm,
were applying it to your own situation, because when I was doing training in ACT as well, and I find the ACT approach so fascinating. And I did training with Dr. Russ Harris,
mm,
and he was talking about it's so important for you to, as a therapist, to actually apply the ACT principles to yourself. And
mm,
especially the different activities that you're taught in the training, apply them to yourself in your own
mm,
situation, because that's the only way you're going to see if you'd be even prepared to recommend it to a client. Because if you've tried
mm,
it on yourself and you think either the activity or the strategy was too hard to do, it was maybe too long or too
mm,
obscure, and you found it unhelpful, then it wouldn't be something you would recommend to your client.
mm,
And at
mm,
least you'd be able to say to people, well, yes, I actually have tried this, and I
mm,
did find
mm,
it
mm.
helpful. Do you think it helps
Yeah.
you now that you've had experience applying it to your own
Mm.
situation?
Yeah, it definitely does. But for me also, I find the gym setting is such a powerful tool for applying principles such as ACT, not only for my client, but also for me. So one of the things that I regularly do, because a big focus in our sessions is also educating young people around